At least 46 are dead after an extremely fierce blaze in Taiwan sparked inside a 13-story building. It's the island's deadliest fire in years. Netizens accuse Chinese authorities of inciting murder. The authorities are offering a higher reward for one criminal suspect's body than for clues about his whereabouts. LinkedIn is leaving China. The social networking platform says it's getting harder to operate there because of the Chinese regime's censorship rules. Japan's ruling party is vowing to double its defense spending. That's to deter the Chinese military's more aggressive behavior in the region. And the European Union plans to depend less on drugs from China. That's after over-reliance on China caused trouble for the EU in trying to source medicine amid the pandemic. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. China news may seem chaotic. With so much information swirling in the news, we want to offer you a look at the bigger picture to help you make sense of the details. If you haven't already, use the link in the description box down below and subscribe to our China in Focus newsletter. On top of offering the highlights of what's going on, it also gives the much-needed context behind those stories. And once in a while, you'll also get a peek into some behind-the-scenes content to see what we're up to. Every Friday morning, the latest will land in your inbox. A fire in a high-rise building in Taiwan raged out of control for hours on Thursday. Taiwanese officials say the death toll has soared and dozens are injured.
An overnight fire in Taiwan raged for hours, killing at least 46 people and injuring 41. The 13-story building in Kaohsiung City caught fire around 3 a.m. on Thursday. An earlier report says the blaze was extremely fierce and destroyed many floors. At least 11 bodies were reportedly sent straight to the morgue. One woman is seen kneeling on the ground, struck by the scene.
My father and mother are still in there. They are 60 to 70 years old. They can't walk properly.
The cause of the fire is unclear, but firefighters note the flames burned most intensely where clutter was piled up. Officials reportedly have not yet ruled out arson. The building's lower floors were completely blackened after the fire, Taiwan's deadliest in years. The last fire of a similar magnitude in 1995 killed 64 people.
A deadly chemical plant blast in China. Fires raged in an industrial zone in the eastern province of Jiangsu. This comes after an explosion and fire at a factory on Thursday, wounding one with another missing. Videos of the incident are circulating online. A local resident tells the Chinese media he first heard the blast in the morning. Then the house was shaken, items fell from the closet, and windows cracked too. The incident occurred in a factory that makes hydrogen peroxide solutions used in colorants and toothpaste. According to reports, the company manufactures and exports chemical products, including hazardous chemicals. Authorities reportedly penalized the plant 3 times this year for not meeting fire prevention standards. According to a local report, the fire remains under investigation and rescue efforts are ongoing. Social networking platform LinkedIn is going to shut down in China. That's amid growing pressure to follow Beijing's censorship rules. The company says they will release a new app in China instead, but it will prevent individual users from sharing content. NTD's Allison Lee brings us more.
Microsoft's LinkedIn announced Thursday that they are going to shut down the Chinese version of their platform later this year. They say they're facing a significantly more challenging operating environment and greater compliance requirements in China. LinkedIn launched a localized version for China in 2014, and it is the last major U.S. social media platform openly accessible in China. The company acknowledges that when they launched the Chinese app, they agreed to adhere to the Chinese regime's internet requirements. Beijing requires all internet companies operating in China to hand over user data and censor on demand. LinkedIn explains their decision back then. While we strongly support freedom of expression, we took this approach in order to create value for our members in China and around the world. After the Chinese version is shut down, the company will launch a new standalone app called InJobs in China later this year. InJobs will not include a social feed or the ability to share posts or articles. LinkedIn explains their goal moving forward is to work with Chinese businesses to help them create economic opportunity and deliver more prosperity in the world. Back in March, Chinese internet regulators told LinkedIn to censor what the regime called political content. And just last month, the company blocked the profiles of several U.S. journalists in China for posting prohibited content. China is currently LinkedIn's third largest market globally after the US and India. Allison Lee, NTD News.
Japan may put more effort into countering threats from China. Japan's ruling party made an unprecedented election pledge to double defense spending. The Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, proposed at least 2% of the country's GDP could be spent on the military, mainly to deter China. That's twice their current military spending and about $100 billion. The pledge was presented ahead of a national election this month. Experts don't expect the goal to be reached soon. However, it's a sign that Japan has, over time, abandoned its commitment to keep its military budget within 1% of GDP. Meanwhile, the U.S. has been pushing key allies to spend more on defense. The proposal comes as Japan sounds the alarm over China's military activities in Asia, especially toward Taiwan. Japanese media Nikkei Business Daily conducted a survey of over 1,500 people at the end of last year. Nearly 90% of respondents believe China is a threat to Japan. Japan's military strategy is focused on defending territory along the edge of the East China Sea. There, Tokyo and Beijing have disputes over a group of islands. And talking about showing strength, let's look to another neighbor of Beijing, North Korea. The country not only tests missiles from time to time, but also tries to show its strength in other ways, like in the way North Korean TV showed earlier this week. Their leader and his generals watching seem to enjoy the display. Now we look north of China to one of their most important neighbors, Russia, which spoke publicly about a little island to the south, Taiwan, and that's rare. On Wednesday, Russia's President Vladimir Putin said China doesn't need to use military force on Taiwan. He added that he did not believe China's leaders had any reason or intention to use military force to solve any issues. At an energy conference in Moscow, Putin was asked about the risk of war in the region. He addressed China's economic power, saying Beijing could reach its national goals through building up its economic potential. The World Health Organization, or WHO, said on Wednesday its newly formed advisory group on dangerous pathogens may be the last chance to determine the origins of the CCP virus. The agency urged China to provide data from early cases. Jonah Green has the details.
Right now, this is our best chance, and it may be our last chance to understand the origins of this virus.
The World Health Organization announced the creation of a newly formed group Wednesday that it called its last chance to determine the origins of COVID-19 and urged China to cooperate. The question of where and how the coronavirus came to be has become a highly volatile issue and a particularly touchy topic for China, where the first cases emerged in late 2019. Mike Ryan, WHO's head of emergencies program, urged calm amid a renewed bid for answers.
That is a human endeavor to understand a virus that has stopped our whole world. And I would ask everyone, countries, journalists, and everybody else, to create a little space for that discussion to happen.
A WHO-led team spent 4 weeks in and around Wuhan, China earlier this year with Chinese scientists probing the earliest known cases of the coronavirus, and said in a joint report in March that the virus had probably been transmitted from bats to humans through another animal, but further research was needed. WHO Director Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said that the investigation was hampered by a lack of raw data and has called for lab audits. China has repeatedly dismissed theories that the virus leaked from one of its laboratories and has said no more visits are needed. But the WHO believes otherwise.
And we very much hope that there will be further missions to China and other countries.
In an editorial in the journal Science, the WHO said that detailed investigations of the earliest known and suspected cases in China prior to December of 2019 were still needed, including analyses of stored blood samples from 2019 in Wuhan. Chen Xu, China's ambassador to the UN, noted that international teams had been sent to China twice already, and that, quote, it is time to send teams to other places.
In the past 2 years, the WHO twice sent experts to Wuhan for a field visit. The first trip took place at the beginning of 2020, right after the first CCP virus cases in Wuhan were made public. International experts stayed in the city for 2 days. The second visit earlier this year lasted 4 weeks in Wuhan, but for 2 of those weeks, the WHO experts had to stay in a hotel for quarantine. And they spent only a couple of hours in the Wuhan Virology Institute, the lab at the center of the controversy about the virus's origin. A violent murder in southern China. 2 dead and 3 were injured in a family massacre. The fugitive killer's story is stirring discussion online.
Violence broke out over the weekend in Fujian. A man allegedly stabbed a family in a village, killing 2 and wounding 3, including a 10-year-old child. Local police are offering a reward of more than $3,000 for his whereabouts and triple that for his body, the offer triggering controversy online. Comments suggest this kind of reward encourages people to kill, as a higher amount is promised for the suspect's body than for clues about his location. The police then removed their announcement. According to a Chinese media report, the victims were identified as neighbors of the suspect, surnamed O. In 2017, O applied to the local government to renovate his old house. Following approval, O demolished the old house to build a new one. But that plan was thwarted by the victims. Backed by the local government under China's communist regime, the victim's family repeatedly protested against O's plan. As a result, O and his 90-year-old mother had nowhere to go. For 6 years, they lived under a makeshift canopy. A fellow villager tells us,
"We generally cannot build a house here. Neighbors have to sign off on it. No signature, no approval. But O has approval, so I don't know why the neighbors obstructed it."
It seems O tried to reach out for help. In a published photo, he wrote phone numbers for complaint hotlines on a piece of paper, including those for the state media and other authorities. He also posted on social media in early June, but those efforts seem to go nowhere.
He contacted Southeast TV station. He also wanted to petition and defend his rights. He has been ignored for 5 years. That's why this happened.
But one incident, O's canopy collapsed in a typhoon, and some fragments fell into the victim's house. This led to an argument between them, and ultimately the slaughter. After Chinese media reported on the background story, rather than condemning O, many Chinese people have expressed sympathy with the frustrations that led to the murders. Some even openly said they hoped he would never be caught. Sadly, similar incidents have occurred across China. Attacks are usually related to personal grievances or disputes, and often happen among those with the least.
The women in this video are kicking away a street vendor's vegetables. They're known as chengguan, officially called urban administrative and law enforcement. They aren't officially police officers, but they do have similar authority. They are tied to abuses of power, frequently seen robbing shops, harassing peddlers, and confiscating their merchandise. In the past, most chengguan were men. A comment says, "Now you're hiring female hooligans. The CCP's defeat is obvious. They have run their course." Another comment says, "They really don't know what morality or conscience is. Poor, sad country." The video doesn't say where this happened, but this kind of thing happens almost every day in China. Another video posted on Wednesday shows a group of chengguan taking a motor cart from an old vendor with all his belongings still on it. But some people react in other ways to the chengguan. Videos emerging show some fighting back. How do Chinese traffic officials use their power to benefit themselves? It's a common practice for traffic police in China to randomly issue fines to drivers, even when they've done nothing wrong. For example, they might fine all passing cargo trucks for being too heavy without testing their weight. A truck driver recently revealed a new method used to extort money from him. In the video, he said a toll station operated by the authorities said napa cabbage is not a vegetable. It is not allowed to go through the green channel, and tolls cannot be waived. The rule there says vehicles that transport vegetables are exempt from paying tolls and should take the so-called green channel. The driver in the video complains. What are the policies? All this just depends on what they say. Aren't they making trouble for us drivers? A Chinese police officer who defected is speaking out. He says he's seen how one of China's ethnic minorities, the Uyghurs, are treated in the country's concentration camps. Here's more.
This man used to be a police officer working in China's concentration camps. Speaking to Australian news outlet Sky News, he described how authorities inside the camps treat Uyghur detainees.
Can say it's numb and heartless. They don't see ordinary people as human beings. They do things that you don't do to human beings.
Reports say the concentration camps in China's Xinjiang hold over 1 million Uyghurs, members of an ethnic minority group. The U.S. says Beijing is committing genocide against them through mass detention and forced sterilization. Beijing denies the allegation, but Jiang recounts that deaths in the camps were common.
2 people would use sticks to put pressure on a detainee's legs, tie him up and stamp on his arms, shackle his hands and bang them against the table, pump cold water through a water hose into the detainee's mouth while tied up, and various methods other officers prefer. There's a lot of them. If accidents happen, it's normal that some people die.
He says when he was assigned to work in Xinjiang, the number of detainees there was already sizable, as many as more than 900,000. At a press conference in China, a Sky News reporter questioned Chinese officials about what Jiang said.
We've spoken to a Chinese man who says he works as a detective in Xinjiang. He said that Uyghurs being taken to Xinjiang were put in crowded trains, they weren't given water, they weren't given food, they weren't allowed to go to the toilet. He said that beatings happened inside the vocational training schools and that sometimes people died. Do you have any comments about his allegations?
Here's how the official responded.
After hearing the situation described by the person who claimed to have worked as a police officer in Xinjiang, I can only say that it's completely fake.
Jiang says he disagrees with the official's comment. He notes that he personally carried out some of the abuses he described, but has since cut ties with his past and is helping shine a light on what's happening.
A local CCP virus or COVID-19 case is confirmed in Inner Mongolia, China. The case was spotted in Ehrnhot in the Gobi Desert along the Sino-Mongolian border. All the non-essential services have been suspended in the city so far, and there's mass testing for all. That started on Wednesday. A worker from a logistics company tested positive, and their case was confirmed that afternoon. The next day, the city's pandemic control office announced a lockdown. Authorities immediately implemented tight traffic control at all major crossroads in the city. Service suspensions include government offices, schools and kindergartens, factories, and various other types of businesses. Local residents question whether there's more than one case of the virus, as the authorities had convened urgently to speak about the lockdown at 3 a.m. Some say there are still people on the streets without face masks. China's top coal-producing province, Shanxi, suffered flooding from persistent downpours. Local villagers told us they fled in panic when the flood struck, and now local authorities are ignoring them while they struggle to recover.
In the middle of the night in China's Shanxi province, inside Jinping village, floodwaters breached the river embankment, guarded by local villagers.
The floodwater comes too fast. It's so loud. I can't even describe it.
The incident struck last week. In less than an hour, the overflow swept over the area's last line of flood defense. The top official sounded the alarm, urging residents to find high ground.
I was dumbstruck. I didn't know where to go.
We spoke to one of them about what she witnessed. To protect her identity, we gave her a pseudonym. She explained that locals fled in a hurry despite the short notice. Many took refuge in a nearby village at a higher elevation. Nearly everyone was forced to spend the night on the roadside, including children and the elderly. Lin recalls that the night was a cold one.
It was terrible.
After the evacuation, floodwaters had since destroyed homes and submerged much Jinping village. The next day, some residents went to assess the damages by boat. They told Lin that half the area was underwater, and that in the worst areas, the flooding measured nearly 80 inches deep. The disaster was triggered by near continuous downpours over the span of 2 weeks. The rising water drained into a local river, eventually causing it to overflow. That's on top of the fact that several upstream reservoirs had reportedly discharged excess water to relieve the added pressure. Villages across Shanxi province suffered flood damage, including in Willow village.
We villagers didn't know about the floodwater discharge. We hurried to evacuate. We villagers are illiterate, suffering people. Several Jinping villagers died from the flood.
China's state media reported Tuesday that almost 2 million people have been affected by the flood, and as many as 120,000 were displaced after almost 20,000 houses collapsed. But until now, villagers affected by the flood have relied on themselves or civil aid groups for help.
No subsidies, no place to live, no food provided.
Food, drinks, and sheets were all donated by caring people.
Local media reported an estimated nearly 200,000 hectares of crops were also destroyed. Another local, also with a pseudonym, explained that in Jinping village,
We grow mainly grapes and corn. Both are now all flooded. Our people are now suffering beyond words.
Wang says they will replant their crops next year and hope to reap the benefits the following year. Driven by reported lack of support from the local government under China's Communist Party, some 70 people from Willow Village gathered at their local township building. There, they asked authorities for help. Forecasters say Shanxi experienced its worst flooding on record last week, just months after severe flood damage in central China's Henan province.
International financial institutions seem to have differing opinions on the risks posed by China's property sector. American investment bank Morgan Stanley says the outlook for the sector in China is improving. It has upgraded its rating to attractive, even though several big developers are struggling to pay their debts. One Morgan Stanley analyst says the systemic risk is manageable. Meanwhile, rating agency S&P Global delivered fresh downgrades to two of the sector's bigger firms. And the International Monetary Fund is also warning that the problem could spread to China's domestic property market, financial institutions, or even globally. The planned rules change is also aimed at reducing the EU's reliance on medicine ingredients produced abroad. The Commission estimates that 2/3 of the global supply of medicine ingredients is concentrated in India and China. At the onset of the pandemic last year, the EU with its 27 member states encountered problems in obtaining a wide range of medicines and their ingredients from these two countries. The Arctic has become an area for superpowers to compete, and among them, the U.S., Russia, and China. Their focus is natural resources and shipping routes. And now the European Union also wants a share. The European bloc has limited influence in the region. 3 of its member states are in the Arctic Council, but the EU itself is not. The Council consists of 8 countries, all of which have territories within the Arctic. China isn't a member of the Council, but it proclaims itself a near-Arctic state. For 20 years, Beijing has carried out Arctic expeditions, and they set up their first research base there. Now, the Europeans are planning to promote sustainable development in this region too. This from their proposal published Thursday. The EU plans to open an office in Greenland and use EU funding to promote sustainable development in the Arctic. The proposal says the EU is committed to ensuring that oil, coal, and gas stay in the ground, including in Arctic regions, though the bloc still imports oil and gas extracted in the region. The European Commission wants to work with partners towards a legal obligation not to allow oil or gas exploration in the Arctic or adjacent regions. The Arctic has become a competition field for superpowers, from the U.S., Canada to Russia and China, as shrinking polar ice offers new opportunities for resources and shipping routes. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching, and see you tomorrow.